Hey, good morning, goal setters. I want to talk this morning about when you officially become something. It's an idea that has intrigued me recently, and I heard somebody talking about it on a podcast, and I'm sure that's no surprise because that's where I get a lot of information, books, and sometimes articles online. But I listen to a lot of podcasts. I love podcasts. And side note, when you're listening to podcasts, don't pay as much attention to the things they are saying as the things your brain tells you while you're listening to a podcast. Let me say that again, because that's a deep thought. And once you discover this, it's amazing. When you're listening to a podcast, don't pay as much attention to what the interviewer and the interviewee are saying and are teaching, although that's important, don't get me wrong. Don't pay as much attention as that as what your brain tells you and teaches you while you are listening to it. So you will get some epiphanies. Anyways, ideas will strike you while you're listening to a podcast, and those matter. So really, for me, the biggest benefit, I get a lot out of podcasts, and I listen to them, and I love them, and there's some great thoughts and some great teaching that goes on. But every once in a while, my brain goes kind of into this autopilot mode where I'm listening, but I'm kind of not. I'm a little bit zoning, and it happens a lot while I'm running. And my brain starts going off onto these different projects that I'm working on, because that's kind of my main focus right now. And then my brain will discover things and will say things and will uncover ideas and new things new thoughts and new things that I should talk about, or that I should explore, or that I should write down. And it didn't come from the podcast, but the podcast is what spurred the thought. So see if that's true for you. I'd love to know. It's true for me. I love it. I get as much or more out of what I get as a byproduct from a podcast than literally from the podcast itself. Anyways, so that said, one of the things that I learned yesterday, back from my side note, was as they were talking about this idea of when you become something officially. In the world of education, you go and you study, and you become a botanist, or you become a psychologist, or you become a doctor, or you become, with additional schooling, you can become a plastic surgeon, or a lawyer, or a construction manager, and you get a degree in your field of interest. So you study for X number of years, and they hand you a certificate, and that certificate suggests that you have some level of expertise in that area. Okay? That's the society that we live in. You might get all C's, you might get straight A's, but you've got a certificate. You have learned a thing or two as it pertains to that subject, and you're in a position to be able to help people along, teach people. You can start a business with that expertise, right? This is all stuff we know. So what do we not know? All right, great question. I'm so glad you asked, because in the arts, it's not quite so cut and dry. Now think about it. Let's say you want to be a writer. Well, when are you officially a writer? Do you have to have a 4-year degree to be an author or writer? Okay. I mean, there are children that have published books. They don't have a 4-year degree. There probably aren't children that have done brain surgery or that have managed the home building process. Just saying. In arts, it's much more of a gradual or nebulous type of a situation instead of so cut and dry. There's no light switch. When you turn it on and boom, the room is filled with light. You have an on, you have an off. It's dark, it's light, there's a switch, there's a specific time period. And with the arts, it's more like a dimmer switch. It's more like a sunrise. When exactly, what exact moment is the sunrise? Is it the instant the light peers above the mountain or the horizon? Is that it? Or is it just before? Because before you see the sun, there's a lot of light coming out. So there's this kind of thing going on that's just really interesting to me. When do you become X? And fill in the blank. There's a lot of things you could put in there. When do you become an entrepreneur? You could become an entrepreneur at age 8. You could become an entrepreneur as a teenager. There are teenagers that make 6-figure incomes because they're successful entrepreneurs. They never went to school for it. They just became one. And there are artists. When did you become an artist? At what point do you tell people, I am an artist? I am like I said, a musician, or I am a writer. I am a speaker. What about speaking? All of these, and there's so many more. They're very legitimate industries to have a career in that don't necessarily have a certificate that tells you you are or you are not that thing. So then we come into play with this idea of, fake it until you make it. We've all heard that, right? Fake it until you make it. And I think there's something there with that. I don't know if I agree wholeheartedly with that, because I think there are times for it where inside you really have to pretend if you're not there yet, and you have to convince yourself that you're there to give yourself that confidence that you need so that people will pay attention to you and take you seriously. But from the outside world, you also need to build credentials, and you need to build credibility, and you need to build experience, and you need to speak from a point of, I've done this works, I'm not just guessing, right? So the fake it till you make it thing is kind of a two-edged sword, and it's kind of interesting, but I think there's something there with this, especially inside your mind, when you talk to yourself, and you should talk to yourself in your head, maybe more so than out loud, because you might get funny looks from people, but you know what? You got to tell yourself things. You got to tell yourself things that nobody else is telling you, and fake it until you make it is one of those things. So if you're becoming a musician or an artist or a writer or any one of these types of fields, an entrepreneur, I'm probably talking to some people who are entrepreneurs who are on the path to become an entrepreneur. There's no certificate. There's nothing that says, hey, you've arrived. You are now an entrepreneur. So you can go out and entrepreneuriate. You can't. There isn't. You just say, I'm an entrepreneur, and you start selling something, or you start providing a service, or you start doing something, for the community or for your clients. You start getting clients. If you just wake up one day, you can say, I am an entrepreneur, and you can start a business that day. That's the process of becoming an entrepreneur. Now, does that mean you're a wildly successful entrepreneur? No, of course not. That's silly. But you are an entrepreneur as soon as you say you are, and you start doing the things that entrepreneurs do. It could be one day, it could be 10 years. Same with being a musician and a writer, and et cetera, et cetera. So there are fields that require certificates, and there are many, many fields that do not. And as you're trying to figure out your life, what you want to do with your life, if any of those art fields are for you, and if that's something that you're considering as a venue, and you're thinking to yourself, yes, but, you remember the yeah, but? That's a funny story, but for another podcast. So yeah, but I don't have this, or I don't have this experience, or I'm not this, I'm not good enough. We have these voices in our head that tell us, yeah, I'd like to be an artist, or I'd like to be a musician, but haven't done this, or haven't done that. And we're our own worst critiquer, right? We are the harshest persons. We critique ourselves more harshly than anybody. So we hold ourselves back, and those are called limiting self-beliefs. And you hear entrepreneurs and successful coaches or success coaches and people like that talk about this all the time. Limited mindset or limited beliefs. And that's when we hold ourselves back and do ourselves a disservice by not acknowledging our decision to be something. And now we might be at the beginning. That's okay. But if you want to be a musician, if you want to be a writer, if you're managing a blog and you want to be a writer, well, you may not be a wildly successful, John Grisham type author with world fame. Well, we're not saying that. An author is someone who writes. And if you write, you can consider yourself to be an author, or a writer, or a musician, or an artist, et cetera, et cetera. So just some really interesting thoughts there for you. I don't necessarily have any concrete answers this time. It was just something that intrigued me, and I wanted to share those thoughts with you just so that you can look for it. I think sometimes as we're learning about things like this, just being aware and seeing things from a new perspective helps us in our, as we're facing life. If you learn nothing more from this episode other than some fields have a hard line. Graduation, you go through this and that, and you come out the other side with a certificate, and you are now officially X. And other fields don't have that. I think understanding that distinction is a little bit of a mind shift or an epiphany that can help you, because it gives you a deeper perspective of the world. So that's what today's all about. I hope you got something from it. If you're not already, go to 3by5goals.com and check it out. That's how I do all my goals. That's how I capture ideas. That's where that's a source for a lot of amazing things that I'm pursuing and that I have pursued over the years, because I've been able to organize and focus my life into a daily to-do list, weekly, monthly, and one main goal at a time that I focus on, and then space for creative writing and a little bit of thank you space. It's always good to be thankful for the good things that you have in your life. Anyways, I'm not going too deep into it right now. If you're intrigued, go to 3by5goals.com, 3x5goals.com. Check it out. It outlines the program, exactly how it works. I'm not selling anything right now. I'm considering, I'm exploring, looking at some things, but for right now, it's just there, and you can, just start using it if you want. I love it. If you don't use that, then just at least do something. The principle is you got to write your goals down every day, and you have to journal, and you have to write. You have to write every day. It's a creative exercise. It develops your mind. It keeps your mind going, and it opens your mind to receiving ideas. And your problems are all simply one idea away from being solved. Any problem that you have, ideas are king in this world, especially in the business world. You just need an idea, one idea away, and you can have all of your dreams. You can have a huge business, you can have happiness, or maybe not. Maybe there's a few more variables with happiness, but things that you're pursuing, achievement in general. If you're facing a huge problem, you're just one idea away. I feel like I'm just going off of tangents now, but anyways, forgive me for babbling a little bit here at the end. Just a few thoughts there to start your day off. I hope you have a great day. I hope you're setting goals and writing them down. And if you have any thoughts or comments, please, I invite you to share below, comment, follow me on Facebook, and of course here on YouTube. And everything that I'm doing, I'm building my website out, so you can go back there for daily updates. Anyways, I hope that helps. Have an amazing day.